Hey everybody, welcome to Real Talk. I am your host Paul Britton, and joining me for a very special episode of the show today is old host Sergio Barrera. Hey Sergio, it's good to have you back. How you doing?
Emphasis on old. No.
Yeah, prior. I should have said
Yeah,
prior. I'm sorry.
No, I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm really excited to be back so soon and really excited to talk about today's movie.
Yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon. Marty Scorsese's back, everybody.
Yeah.
And when Marty Scorsese comes back, it is not that difficult to get Sergio to hop on a pod and talk about movies. So
Definitely. In fact, I've already reached out for you for future stuff because, man, those trailers.
you have, yeah. And so we won't get too deep into what future holds, but let's just say award season's picking up. So we might see some people that we're used to seeing a little more frequently, and I'm excited about that. One of those award movies, or potential award movies, is Killers of the Flower Moon from everybody's favorite filmmaker, Martin Scorsese. And I got to ask you, Sergio, do you remember your first Martin Scorsese movie that you saw? Because we are of an age that we were absolutely seeing movies at the time that Martin Scorsese was really starting to become famous. Okay.
Yeah.
But we were also probably too young to go see, for example, The Taxi Driver in a theater.
Right. Yeah. For me, I think the earliest one I can think of seeing, and it was probably, I'm trying to look at the year.
Okay.
Because I think the first one I can recall having seen, and then it sent me down the rabbit hole of his films, was Goodfellas.
Okay, so interesting. So that was the first one you remember seeing.
Yeah, and I can't even tell you that it was like at the theater or anything like that.
Okay,
but I remember that being the first one. Yeah, as I look at his filmography, Goodfellas would have been the one that that was my gateway into.
Okay.
And then after that, it was like, if it had anything to do with Martin Scorsese, it was like, yeah, bring it on.
Sure.
I'm ready for this.
So the first one I saw was Taxi Driver, actually.
And that would have been my second.
It would have been late 80s before Goodfellas came out, but not too long before. It was definitely before, like, so The Last Temptation of Christ was 1988. And I vividly remember that movie coming out and the
controversy around it.
And the controversy. And it would have been right around that time that I would have just found Taxi Driver somewhere on cable and be like, oh, I'm going to watch this,
Yeah.
And I did not see Goodfellas in a theater, but as soon as it hit video stores, I was on top of it. So yeah, I mean, I think that Goodfellas is probably most people's foray into Marty. And do you think there's a more appropriate movie? Because I don't. I'm just gonna say, like, I think if you're gonna introduce somebody to Martin Scorsese, it's just like, here, watch Goodfellas. If you like it, we'll have a conversation. We'll explore some other things.
Sure. Sure. Goodfellas is the movie that I think he's most known for because of some of the work he did after it. That seems to be a revisit of that particular genre of mob films. The thing I love to tell people about Goodfellas is, if you're just someone who wants to watch a movie for pure enjoyment, story, and such, it's for you. If you're someone who's a student of cinema, it's for you. I mean, there are so many aspects to that film, and when I first saw it, it was from the lens of just someone who loves mob movies.
Okay.
Top favorite movie all time, Godfather 2. And so Goodfellas was just sort of my introduction to Scorsese himself. But then in the years that have passed, as I've, because if there's a movie I've read a ton about, it's Goodfellas. Goodfellas is one of them because I love Scorsese's work, and to hear, people break down the different scenes, and there's that famous walkthrough in the restaurant, and that is so talked about, that one shot, continuous shot scene. This is, I believe it's a good gateway movie for people who want to explore Scorsese, but it doesn't by no means cover the ground of, like, what is Scorsese's work, because
what are some of your ones that you like that go beyond that. Like, so, take out Gangs of New York, take out Casino,
Yeah.
take out Departed, talking about, one-offs, Martin Scorsese one-offs. Which are some of the ones that you like?
Yeah, Kundun actually is a favorite of mine because it is such a departure. Again, I explored that one after I had become a fan of his.
Mhm.
By all means, I am a huge fan of Gangs of New York.
Sure.
I can that's one I can watch over and over. And only recently, I'm talking less than 6 months ago, Shutter Island
Okay.
was one I finally was, was like, I need to watch that.
Yeah.
And and of course, completely different films,
Yeah. Shutter Island was one I came to super late as well,
Mhm.
within the past year. For me, I've never seen Kundun, and it's impossible to find. Like, you're not going to find it anywhere. Amazon's not. I don't think you can even rent it on Amazon.
I
Like,
don't think
rent it,
so. Yeah,
and
I
it's
tried
like,
looking for in the last couple of years. I couldn't
yeah,
find it.
it's like, enough. Like, everything should be available. And
Yeah.
especially a filmmaker like Martin Scorsese, who literally makes it his life's work to
Hmm.
ensure that as many movies are available as that have been made as possible for people to
Yeah.
take in. For a piece made by Martin Scorsese to not be available is a little weird. But
Yeah.
that brings me to my personal one-off for Marty is Hugo. I love Hugo.
I haven't seen it.
It's
I haven't seen it.
it's you know you have to go into it with knowing two things. One, Martin Scorsese loves film history.
Yeah.
And for him, film is magic. And Hugo is literally an extension of, this is what I believe about filmmakers, that they are magic. And two, it was made to be a kids movie.
Yeah.
So it's super accessible. It was actually the first Martin Scorsese movie my son saw. I took him to see it in theaters when it came out. So, and then just before going to see Killers of the Flower Moon, I showed him Goodfellas. So he's
Are those the
15.
only
He's
two
16
that he's seen so far
now.
of
Yes, at this
Scorsese's?
point,
Okay.
those are the two. I'm gonna do Gangs of New York next.
I have to ask you, what were
Yeah.
his reactions to each one?
It's tough to get him to give detailed reactions,
Okay.
but he really liked Hugo. Hugo was in heavy rotation for us when it came out on DVD originally. And he very much liked Goodfellas. He said it was a really good movie. He recognized that it was a really good movie, and I was able to kind of explain to him, the patented tracking shot that you mentioned, and it's just. And he's like, "Is there one in Hugo?" I was like, "I don't remember exactly. It's been a while, but you can assume that there was one." And I'll tell you, yeah.
I was going to ask you before we get to the movie we're going to talk about. There's two movies I have to ask you about.
Sure.
One, because it was so, for me, again, in the experience I've had with his movies, was just so off kilter and frenetic, was of course Wolf of Wall Street.
Okay.
Which for me is one of his top 5.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, that's a rewatch. It's rewatchable for me over and over. But I haven't yet watched Silence. So,
okay,
have you? And
yes,
so,
I have seen
recommend?
Silence. I definitely recommend it.
Okay.
Silence is I mean, that is a really good example of a big departure just from the general tone and the pacing. It's actually kind of similar to Killers of the Flower Moon in some of its themes as well.
Okay.
And it, I mean, look, it's like most Marty movies, the acting is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's really it's beautiful. I mean, it is really an absolutely beautiful movie. The costumes are like, are you kidding me? So
yeah, it's been sitting on my list for too long.
Yeah, I definitely can recommend it. So
excellent.
But now we come to Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
And that is okay. So what did you know about Killers of the Flower Moon before the movie?
I didn't.
Okay.
And once I knew it was based on a book, I was like, okay, I'll read about it later. I went in, so you've always told me, hey, go in blind,
Yeah, sure.
on certain things. And I applied that to this film. As
Mhm.
soon as I knew it was based on a book, I resisted the temptation to go read about the book.
Right.
Now I want to read the book. But I didn't. This was not a piece of history that I was familiar with.
No, not too many people are.
Yeah.
And I just assumed the book was like, you know, this terrible thing happened, and here's sort of like a fictionalization of what happened, but it's not. Like, what happens on screen, what happens in the book,
Mhm.
the people's names, even like, that's one thing about, like, so Goodfellas. If you try to Google the names of everybody other than Henry Hill, you're going to be directed to different pages because
Right.
they change all the names, because it's okay. These people, it's an amalgama of these
Right.
people, or it's like we think they did some of these things, but a lot of the things that's not the case here. This is a straight up 100% true
Absolutely.
story. And that blew my mind. Like, I had no idea. And so I spent a lot of time reading things, and that, for me, that just doubles the, not only the importance, but the impact and the power that this
Oh,
movie
absolutely.
has. I'm going to do something weird, and I'm actually going to start our conversation on this movie with the very end. The
Okay.
very end. I'm going to start with the coda, because if I don't bring it up now, I'm afraid I'm going to forget about it. And it
Yeah.
was by far my favorite. Like, it was
Yeah.
just amazing. So, and by the way, we're doing spoilers today. Like,
Okay.
let's,
Might as well let people know.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry. Hashtag spoilers. Yes, they're coming. We're going to be talking about things on this movie. You can't have a really good conversation about this movie, I don't think, without
Yeah,
dipping
I
into
agree.
some spoilers, because it's a true story. The plot is kind of really important. But one of the things that we can talk about that isn't super spoilery, but hopefully get some people excited, is because it's a true story. One of the hallmarks of a true story is the coda.
Mhm.
And 99.9% of movies handle the coda with cards,
Right.
words,
The scrolling verbiage. Yeah.
scrolling, whatever it might
Yeah.
be. Henry Hill went on to become a scumbag and end up in jail again, and
Mm.
all these kinds of things.
Right. Right.
That's not what this movie does.
No, it's. I was so glad you wanted to talk about this.
This movie, and so first of all, in the spirit of the movie being a true story, this actually happened. Like,
Yeah.
the FBI. Okay, so the FBI, had a radio show at one time where they kind of propped up and blew up the importance of some of their closed cases,
Yeah.
and that was just
The
a radio
first true
program.
crime podcasts.
Exactly, and it wasn't like, oh, from the files of the FBI. It's like, literally,
Yeah.
from the fucking FBI. Here
Yeah.
you go. And so we are, when the events of the movie are over, we are abruptly brought into who knows what. But there's a guy talking about what has just happened.
Yeah.
And you rather quickly, but not immediately, but rather quickly realize, oh my god, this is like a 1940s, early 50s radio program.
Yeah.
And this is the host, and they show there's an orchestra playing the live chintzy music, and there's the sound effects guys,
Yep.
opening and closing doors and walking on boards and doing weird Foley sound effects, and there's a live studio audience, and there are actors that stand up and talk in the voices of the people.
Yeah. They're voicing the.
And they're saying, this is what's happened to me after
Yeah.
the end of the movie, but it's not. But this is what's happened to these people. It blew me away, Sergio.
It's a brilliant decision on the
God.
part. I have two feelings about this.
Yes.
Which I'm so glad you brought it up.
Yes.
Number one, I love old timey radio. I love the history of it. All of the, like you said, the Foley sound effects, all the things that went into it. When I was in high school, I was part of the speech and theater program, and the only production I was ever part of was it was decided that we were going to put together a stage presentation of a radio show, like an old time radio show. And I was never a theater guy. I was speech, like I was into speech and debate. And it was finally an opportunity for me to actually participate in one of those. So as soon as it started, like that sequence, I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" And then as I realized they were doing the coda, I was like, "What a brilliant decision on the part of Scorsese to take this entire." And I'm glad he did, because I was exhausted by the time reading. I would have missed something, you know.
Yeah.
It was such a creative way to do that. And you know, the only question I have, or the only criticism, I felt that Scorsese putting himself in it at the end felt heavy-handed, but I think I get what he was trying to do. This was a very personal project to him, and he wanted to be the one to tell her story. You know what I'm saying? And so I was okay with it. It just came off very heavy-handed, if you know who he is.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason. So what Sergio's referring to, again, hashtag spoiler alert, is the fact that, you know, of the voice actors, they, you know, the narrator says, and you know, Molly passed away, blah blah, and this is her obituary, and then they show, like, they pan up for a new actor that has stepped up to the mic, and it's Marty. And he reads her obituary, and I think it was purposeful, and I don't think it was purposeful to be heavy-handed, but purposeful to acknowledge that I am a white guy telling this story. There's only so much I can do. You know, and everything, and that's also, I think, the impact that the radio program has also, to realize that this is a dramatization of something that actually happened.
Right.
And nobody knows about it. And it's a really major fucking big deal.
It's huge.
You know, a really big deal of, you know, American history. And, you know, happening at the same time of this movie were the Tulsa race riots that happened, where they bombed the Black Wall Street that was in Tulsa, and like it's referenced during the movie as taking place and impacting some of these people. And it's like, these are stories that just aren't taught. And it's like, you know, not to get too political, but guess what? These are the stories that people want to make sure aren't taught, that they continue to be silenced. They continue to not get taught. And I think Marty was standing up and saying, look, I can only go so far. There's only so much I can. I'm not just a white, I'm an old white guy. There are a lot of people whose voices aren't being heard right now, and I'm just trying to put a voice to them. So I understand where you're coming from, where it's heavy-handed in a sense, but I also feel like I think it's an acknowledgement.
I will say, Paul, that you have added a layer of understanding for me that I hadn't thought about. You know, I thought of it as, you know, it's one thing for it to be a personal project. Second to that, or along with that, I didn't think about it. He was understanding his position in telling the story and wanted to make sure that he acknowledged what he was trying to do. And so that makes a lot of sense. So, but again, one of the most creative, probably the most original way in which he could have done the coda. And it was perfect.
It was perfect. My only complaint is I think they could have opened with the start of the radio show.
Okay.
That's my, and that's a shitty complaint, but that's that's my thing. Like, how amazing would it have been to open the film with we see the young man, and it's it's Leo's character,
Yeah.
and you transition from radio program to the actual events
Yeah.
taking
That
place.
scene where he arrives at
uh,
the train station.
yeah, and
Yeah, that's a good point.
so now
I
we're
mean, we're
back to
already there 3.5 hours. What's a few more, right?
exactly. But now we're back to the start of the film. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the film. Tell me about what worked for you, and just general thoughts, like super
Just
big
overall.
umbrella. Yeah.
There was so throughout the entirety of this film, which it needs to be every minute that it is. So if people's issue with not, because I saw the numbers that came back, box office.
Yeah.
If people's concern about not going to see this film is because of its runtime, which is 3 hours and 37 minutes, you can't do the story unless. Okay, I
Right.
firmly believe that.
Right.
The overall
Not
storytelling,
not the way he told it.
correct. One of my first thought that I want to share about overall my impression of the film is that throughout the entire film, I was trying to put my finger on why I was feeling a certain way about how the story was being told. And I couldn't quite put a finger on why are we doing so much that kind of puts Ernest in this position of hero ? But not. It was like the focus that was being given to him was usually the focus reserved for Molly, in terms of the story.
Right.
That, and it wasn't until must have been yesterday. I was reading this article where Scorsese was being interviewed, and he talked about the importance of making him the focus so that you can get to understand the gravity of his role in this plot, and how he purposefully did that, because then you could relate to him and go, what would I have done? It was a really amazing viewpoint that Scorsese gave in this interview that helped me to, that's what I was trying to put my finger on, because the storytelling itself is done from this perspective of the person you really don't want to be hearing from. I don't know if that makes sense, Paul, but
no, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, and it's so well done.
Yeah.
And so from a pure story standpoint and how it was told, it was so awesome how the choices that were made. We're going to talk about the acting, I'm sure.
Sure.
I mean, it kind of pains me that we're only in October, because like you said, we're entering into award season when these films are coming out. And right now, I know there's still more to come, but Lily Gladstone has staked her claim.
Yeah.
For at the very least a nomination.
Sure.
What could very well turn into a well-deserved win.
Yeah.
And this is DiCaprio. I've never understood why he got it for The Revenant. There's a long conversation there. I don't doubt it. I wish he would have gotten it for Wolf of Wall Street, but I think, does he pick up number 2? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of great work done here, but it's because of the direction.
Yeah.
It's because of the screenplay.
Yep.
And the overall impression for me is I will sit through this marathon of a movie again.
Yeah.
Because it was just so well done.
Yeah. It
was so well done.
It's so immersive. And that's why.
Yeah, that's a good word.
That's why so there's an excellent 2-hour version of this movie.
Oh, sure.
But it's a totally different movie. Because the focus of this movie is the relationship between Ernest and Molly.
Mm-hmm.
And Ernest's role in having that relationship, but also having the relationship with his terrible uncle that is obviously terrible, William Hale, played by Robert De Niro, who, by the way, best supporting actor nomination is a shoe-in. I mean, it's like, stop it,
it's his to lose.
But you cannot get the story and the relationship in 2 hours,
right?
It just doesn't. It's just not going to work. It's going to feel super rushed.
Sure.
You're going to miss a lot of the layered of the layers of how deep
Mhm.
and fucked up that relationship was. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just no
Well,
way.
that and then you need the time because you can't lose the sisters' stories. You
Right.
can't lose the mother story, which this mother story in this,
Oh my
I
god.
mean, golly. You know, Scorsese pictures don't tend to make me cry.
Yeah. No.
You know, like or to get that kind of emotion of
Yeah.
like this is just so sad.
Yeah.
And this one, I'm gonna tell you that several weeks ago or months ago when we first spoke about talking about this film when it came
Mhm.
time, as I saw the trailers, I'm like, man, this is going to be so different from what I used to with Scorsese. And I was like, okay, well, and then I saw the runtime and I was like, oh my gosh. But then I thought, there's this. It's Scorsese. You just got to
Yeah.
trust.
Right.
And this is one of his best, Paul.
It
I
really
think this
is.
is absolutely one of
This
his best.
this movie does everything successfully
Yeah,
and I wanted to avoid this as much as possible, but it has to come up. This movie does everything successfully where The Irishman completely, totally
sure.
failed for me.
Yeah,
Completely failed. And and it's not super laden with story as much as it is super laden with emotion and heart and
right.
meaning and importance. And that heart and meaning and importance is purposefully lacking in The Irishman.
Sure.
And uh, you know anybody who complains about the length of this movie just isn't connecting with what it means to
It's
be
intense.
in the United States of America. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there. And I mean that in a very patriotic way too,
Sure, sure.
but also in an honest way. Like your patriotism can't be just rah rah rah.
Right.
It has to be rah rah rah. Fuck, we can be better. You
Yeah,
know,
there are these blots in our history
yeah,
that have got to be acknowledged. And
yeah,
I learned so much because do you know that I knew so little about this event or this history
right,
of the Osage and the oil that when do you remember at the beginning how everything was in black and white, those
yeah,
black and white images of the Indian of the Osage and their jewels and this and that.
yeah.
I honestly thought, Paul, that was going to transition into, but that isn't the story.
Oh, okay,
You know what I'm saying? That's
yeah,
how zero I knew. And so when I began, when it became like, no, this is the life they're living, but they're on a reservation and they have to have the guardianship, basically,
that's crazy.
you begin to realize, my God, like there's so much that gets downplayed
Yeah, yeah.
in our history that this movie brings to the forefront, you know?
And you mentioned the mother, and it's such a poignant and beautiful moment in the movie,
Oh, yeah.
with the mother that it much like the ending, much like the coda, it takes you a second to
Mhm.
figure out exactly what's happening. But as soon as you figure out, okay, this is what's happening, it's like, oh Jesus, this is
Yeah,
brilliant.
it
Um,
really is.
and there's
He
so many moments where it's just like, wait, what just happened? That was amazing.
yeah.
What
No, seriously.
what we
He
just
he
saw was
even
amazing, and I want to just rewind it and watch it again.
no, he even managed to slip in a John Woo moment with the owl. It was like,
Yeah.
you know, I say that half jokingly,
But
but
nobody
no,
had a gun and swung around
that's
with
the
a
only, yeah,
gun
and
like
it
this.
didn't float
So
across the
yeah,
screen in some way.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
no, but that's what I'm saying is there were some very purposeful moments. And in hindsight, I was trying to think, okay, what other movies have I seen him do these very sort of purposeful images, this so much symbolism and so much, in the way of foreshadowing
Mhm.
to even though you knew where you were headed and what was going to happen to this family, all of the decisions he made to allow you to draw those conclusions, but then also feel like he was going to tell you anyway, like
Yeah.
that, the storytelling. I would have loved to have been in the sessions with him and Eric Roth as they put
I
this
know.
together. Because what I mean, imagine the hours, Paul, that they
Well,
spent. You know,
like just we're gonna do things Paul's heard over the past couple weeks
yeah,
about the making of this movie, and So one thing is that originally Leo was going to come in and play Jesse Plemons' character Tom White, and the movie was going to be a a thriller, who's doing this, like an unraveling of a crime type of movie.
Yeah.
And Leo's like, no, this is not how we should tell this story. And that forced Marty to go and say, all right, we need to just do a complete total rewrite.
Yeah.
And so that's why the movie took so long to come about, and why they ended up making The Irishman while this was being written, was because they were like, yeah, we need to kind of start from square one. And
he was originally going to do like a police procedural, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, it's newsflash, it is not that.
Not at all.
The other actor I want to shine a big bright light on is Cara Jade Myers, who plays the eldest sister, Anna.
Mm-hmm.
She's an absolute fucking hurricane that
Absolutely.
I just want to come and blow shit up in every movie that I watch for the rest of my life. It is an absolute crime if I don't see her in 2 movies next year. An absolute crime, period, end of story. This has to happen. She was remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think of how many minutes and how much dialogue she had in the film over the course of its total length, and yet the impact her character made.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking just from the storytelling aspect, her role, it's her acting and it was a quiet chewing of the scenery.
Yes.
Well, meaning it was, how when people chew the scenery, it's very heavy-handed and overt. She was just playing the role the way she interpreted it to be, and it was like, that's going to be a memorable character, or not, not character because they're real people, but you know what I'm saying? It's a memorable person that you want to go find out more about,
Yeah.
So,
and
stunning performance.
A portrayal that makes you want to see more, and I hope we get to see more. Speaking of,
and even some of the people, like some of the not side characters, some of the lesser characters that were like part of the plot, like the one guy that they hire to go, like he had like a bad eye.
Yeah.
Like each of those side characters were so like, oh my gosh, I mean, I hate them all, and I'm supposed to,
Yeah.
It was just something. Jesse Plemons doesn't get enough credit for his overall body of work.
Yeah.
But I understand now. I saw a meme the week before this movie came out where it was just a picture of Jesse Plemons, and it said something like, when this guy shows up, it's going to be a Best Picture nominee. And I didn't realize that, seriously, something like 4 out of the last 5 Best Picture nominees have included a film that he's in.
Oh,
and so
for the last 5 years, there has been a Jesse Plemons
there's been a picture that has, so he's brilliant. I used to get annoyed when I would see him come out on screen on something, and now I'm like, I love the guy.
He's so good. So, I do want to just throw in, by the way, Brendan Fraser does an amazing job too.
Surprise appearance. I loved it.
It's
such a slime.
So good.
Yeah.
And honestly, he's in a totally different movie. Like, because because he shows up and he, the scenes that he plays in are just completely different than anything else that has happened.
Absolutely.
And it transforms from this sort of like really soulful, heartfelt story being told to just this really like off the wall noir, and it's just like, what are you doing? But I love it. I want more.
It was chaotic.
But
it didn't feel like a screeching, like, tire brake.
It
was so brilliant. So many great decisions on the part. I mean, of course what are you going to say about Scorsese's work? But I feel like he surprised us.
Yeah.
With what he decided to do, and this one will stand on its own, like a Kundun, or like probably Silence, I imagine, is along this route of completely different from what people may think Scorsese is about. You
It
know,
will definitely be totally different than what people think Scorsese is about. But other than the fact that it's not going to win Best Picture, and I will tell you why, because Best Picture voters do not like to feel sad. So, and
good
there's
point.
absolutely no way you're going to feel good about this movie, but it will get nominated because enough
Yeah.
people involved with the nominations will be like, oh wait,
Oh, it'd
yeah,
be a crime not to.
yeah. I think it will get at least one of the 4 acting, where Leo Best Actor, Lily Best Actress,
Yeah.
De Niro Best Supporting, and either uh Tontu Cardinal, who plays Lizzie Q, the mom, or
Hmm.
Cara Jade Myers, who plays Anna, will get Best Supporting. I just kind of we'll have to see how that breaks out, but
Sure.
yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
know, anything else strike you about the movie that you want to mention?
I mean, overall, I do want to mention DiCaprio's work in this film
Okay.
because just briefly, because it's funny. It used to be this sort of weird thing. Like if you were a DiCaprio fan, it was like, what? But when you look at his work over the course of his career, the directors who choose to work with him, I mean, he's a favorite of Scorsese's,
Yeah.
obviously. And every time you see him in a Scorsese film, you see the growth. You see that he is truly a student of the craft, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And this, for me, I absolutely believed his best performance of all of his work was Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
That has been supplanted by
Yeah.
his work in this movie.
2 totally different movies too. I mean,
Of course, yeah,
because Wolf of Wall Street, it is just 100% personality plus.
absolutely.
And if you don't bring it, it's going to be obvious that
It's
you
gonna
didn't bring it.
right.
Whereas this is not personality. This is almost the opposite of
Yeah,
personality plus. But if you don't, you have to wonder while the movie is unfolding, are they actually trying to make me feel bad for this guy? Like that's
right, right, right.
not that you at no point should do you, but they definitely want you to sit there and think he's how unwitting is he in this, and
Yeah,
how bad should I feel about the fact that he is just basically being treated like a pawn,
he's a pawn. Yeah,
yeah,
but I think eventually he gets it, and that's why he doesn't
it,
become
but he
the
does.
lovable character.
But even once the trial starts, he's a shit,
Yeah,
and doesn't get it, and it takes so much for him to actually get it. And then the scene before the coda is
yep.
that, and that's it. Like
And where does the
that's the
camera
movie.
stay? Where does the camera stay
Yeah,
in that scene
it's
when
on
he
an empty
lies?
chair.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's again, you're left with where it began, where
Yeah,
it ends, and
yeah.
it's you know
You mentioned his entrance scene. I just want to film nerd stuff for a second. He's coming back from World War I. Okay, and so
right.
not a war hero as much as just a soldier coming
Yeah,
back from World War I. And you see him arrive at this train station, and he's just somebody lost in a mishmash miasma of humanity at this train station, and
yeah,
he's just honestly just another guy. And then you counterimpose that with the scene of Molly at the train station, and
mm,
the settings are identical,
hmm,
i.e., miasma of people, just humanity, but she is clearly not just a guy at the train station.
right.
And she stands out, and everything that I'm not even talking about like, oh, she stands out because you see her and she's in a bright red costume, and it's and Marty Scorsese is doing something subtle, like the scene is shot from her perspective, and people are just gravitate their eyes towards her,
Yeah,
not positively. Like
Right.
you just judging look after judging look after judging look, and it's so important. Though the two most important, there's three really important scenes. Two of them are a couplet. The opening scene with Leo and Molly at the train station,
Yeah.
and then the final scene, and it's just it's heartbreaking and infuriating and everything that makes this a great film in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we've said what needs to be said,
I
because
think so too.
I can't
So
recommend this film enough to people.
I know. So here on Real Talk, we do tacos instead of stars. And if we feel like we can add a little bit more, we do guac, because whoever ate a half a fucking taco. So Sergio, go ahead. Where are you, my man?
This movie for me, in a year where I haven't been to too many movies of this caliber, is a strong 5. I this is a 5 taco film for me.
Yeah.
I'll rewatch it. I will learn from it, and I will appreciate one of my absolute favorite directors continuing to do amazing things. So yeah, 5 tacos, no doubt.
Yeah, and I'm on the same track here. I'm probably not going to make it to the theater to see it again, but it'll be on Apple before the end of the year.
Yeah,
and I will absolutely be watching it again once it reaches Apple. I hope if you haven't seen it yet, you don't wait, that you do go experience it in the theater, because there is a vision, and it unleashes itself in the theater in such a way that the magnitude of the film warrants seeing it in a theater. But it's a great accomplishment from just an absolute legendary director.
Indeed.
Well, Sergio, I hope you hang out for just another second so I can tell you about some crazy shit I saw.
Okay.
All right. What the hell did I just watch? Of course, we are in spooky season, right?
Yeah.
And so that means I gotta go watch a horror movie, Sergio.
I know this title.
Do you?
I believe I do.
Why don't you go ahead and look it up?
Yeah.
And I've got what I was thinking I was going to try to do was find a Cronenberg movie, but I said, well, if I can't find a Cronenberg movie, why don't we do the second best thing and do a H.P. Lovecraft movie? And so like I literally was kind of like, okay, what are the H.P. Lovecraft movies? And then I found this one that was made in 1990, which is like every photo from the movie makes it blatantly obvious that the people that made this movie really, really, really love David Cronenberg, but don't know how to make his movies, but they're going to try anyway. And so you mix H.P. Lovecraft and people who don't know how to make David Cronenberg movies, and you get From Beyond. And this movie is absolutely bonkers. So what happens is like a Dr. Frankenstein-esque scientist doctor is running experiments and realizes that he can use a special tuning fork to get in tune with basically the ethereal plane, this like a layer of existence that is coexists with us, but on a slightly different frequency, I guess you could say, so that we are invisible to them and they are invisible to us. But as soon as he sets the frequency up, they can see us and they're not too happy about seeing us and attack us. And this doctor gets sucked in and his assistant goes crazy. And then so what happens from there is that the psychiatrist is intrigued by the person that is being by this person who has gone crazy, and gets him to recreate the experiments, but now the doctor is now residing in that realm, and he's turned into a monster, and that's it. And it's just crazy, creepy, gross things, and excuses to see boobs, and that's
Yeah,
It's what we expect from the "What the hell did I just watch"
it
segment.
truly is. And let me tell you, there's a quick little Sergio story. So Jen and I, before we were ever together, we were best friends for 7 years. This movie came out in 1986.
Okay.
The very first person I ever, like, I walked from my house to her house. She's like, "Hey, do you want to come see a movie?" And we were pals, and I was like, "Okay, cool." I had to get my parents' permission. Walked up to her. This was the movie.
Oh
This
my
was when
god.
I knew. This was when I knew that all of my suspicions of Jen being weird, were true. And I walked out of that house going, "What the
What?
hell?"
Yeah. What
Literally,
the?
what the hell? And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's very disturbing.
This
It's
has a
very
very, very
disturbing.
special place in my heart.
Yeah, little, you guys should dress up for Halloween with little things in your hair.
Oh my goodness, I'll never forget it. I just confirmed with her. I'm like, "This was the movie, right?" She's like, "Yep, I think so."
Oh my
So,
god.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
God
love
bless the
that this
people
is
who
what
made
came
this.
up when I came on the show.
Yep. I didn't know that, but
We
that
didn't
makes
plan
me
this.
that makes me so happy, by the way.
Yeah,
Like I can't even. I
I love
cannot
it.
even.
I love it.
Fantastic. I highly recommend guess where you can find this.
Let me see. Is it Tubi
It is Tubi.
or
You can find this on Tubi. So
yeah?
I encourage everyone to go and watch From Beyond on Tubi.
Great for this month for sure.
Yep. Well, Sergio, that's all I have for you. I'm going to stick around and do
Awesome.
a review of a documentary I watched on Prime, but you don't need to stick around for that.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Paul. I always enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll see you later in the month.
Take
All
care.
right, bye.
Bye.
So I got to kick you out. I forgot. All right, I'll do
Thanks,
it this
Paul.
time. Bye. Okay. So the last movie I'm going to review is a documentary that showed up on Prime this past week, and it's called Silver Dollar Road. This is, oh man, this is a perfect companion movie to Killers of the Flower Moon because it's just more terrible things that people will do to impoverished and marginalized groups in order to get their land. And that's what this is. And so there's a there in the swamp waters of the beachfront swamp waters of North Carolina. There's this area, there's this one road called Silver Dollar Road, and a African American family purchased a huge tract of land there right around the turn of the century, and they have been farming and shrimping from that spot forever and ever. But developers were like, "Hey, we could turn that property into a lot of things." So they actually cook up their own deeds and start evicting the family from their plot of land. And it's just about the decades long fight of this family to keep their land. Two of the patriarchs from the family spend 6 years in jail for trespassing. 6 years in jail for trespassing. Okay. On their own property that they own. Because if you have any idea that about who gets to set the laws and who gets to throw people in jail, and if you think it's the police, you'd be wrong. And so I look, this is this is just a true story. It's a small true story with huge implications. But it's really important, and it's actually well put together too. It is a compelling narrative, and I hope you'll catch it out. I give it 4 tacos. Not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Other than to say, please go watch Silver Dollar Road on Prime. That's all we have for the show today. Be sure to stop in next week. I may or may not see Five Nights at Freddy's. I was hoping to do something else, but the movie that I thought was coming out isn't going to hit this area. It's only going to be LA, New York. So I'm kind of pissed off about that. So I'll probably end up seeing Five Nights at Freddy's. Well, anyway, we'll figure it out. We'll be here. I hope that you will join us. I am Paul Britton. That was Sergio. This is Real to Real Talk. I hope to see you next week. Thanks. Have a great day.